It was a sunny afternoon at a quiet gun range, the kind of place where respect for skill and safety is the unspoken rule. Among the visitors that day was a grizzled veteran named Jack, a man with a calm demeanor and years of experience that spoke louder than words. Jack was there to hone his craft, something he had done countless times before. But this time, his peaceful session was about to take an unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, a gang of rowdy bikers roared onto the scene, their laughter echoing across the range as they ignored the rules and made their presence known. They zeroed in on Jack, mistaking his quiet confidence for weakness. Little did they know they were about to learn a lesson in humility, and it wouldn't take long for Jack's unparalleled skills to come into play. Stay tuned, because this is where the real story begins. The bikers strutted around, their loud voices cutting through the air as they exchanged smug glances. Jack kept to himself, focused on loading his gear. He wasn't one to pick fights, but the atmosphere was shifting, and he could feel their eyes on him. One of them, a tall man with a worn leather jacket, sneered and nodded toward Jack. "Hey, old man, you think you can outshoot us?" He taunted, his tone dripping with mockery. The others laughed, clearly enjoying the show they thought they were about to put on. Jack glanced their way, offering a small, polite smile before returning to his task. His silence only seemed to fuel their egos. They assumed he was scared, out of his depth. What they didn't know was that Jack had seen more in his lifetime than any of them could imagine. The range was his sanctuary, but today it might become a proving ground. The leader of the group stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. "How about we make this interesting?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The rest of the bikers egged him on, their voices a mix of laughter and jeers. Jack paused, his hand steady as he placed his last magazine on the table. He looked up, meeting the leader's gaze with a calm that seemed out of place in the growing tension. "Not here to compete," Jack said evenly. His voice was low, but carried a weight that made a few of the younger bikers pause. The leader, however, wasn't fazed. "Aw, come on," he pressed. "What's the matter? Afraid we might show you up." The bikers laughed again, but Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he turned his focus to his rifle, adjusting the scope with practiced precision. The subtle movements seemed to irritate the group even more. They didn't understand why he wasn't biting, and it only made them push harder. But Jack wasn't ignoring them, he was observing. Every word, every movement, every smug smirk, he cataloged it all. The tension thickened as the bikers exchanged glances, clearly ready to escalate. But they had no idea they were about to cross a line they couldn't come back from. One of the younger bikers, itching to prove himself, swaggered closer to Jack. "Let's see what you've got, old man," he said, his voice dripping with bravado. He picked up a nearby target sheet and held it up, grinning as he placed it at a distance farther than usual. "Bet you can't even hit this." The gang erupted into laughter, but Jack stayed calm. He adjusted his stance, his hands steady as a rock. Without a word, he raised his rifle and peered through the scope. The range fell silent except for the faint rustle of wind and the sharp click of Jack's rifle as he chambered around. The bikers watched, their mocking grins faltering slightly. Then, with a single pull of the trigger, the shot rang out. The target fluttered slightly, but stayed intact. The leader smirked. "Missed, huh?" But when one of the bikers retrieved the sheet, the laughter stopped. A perfect hole marked the bullseye, dead center. Jack's calm precision stunned them, but their egos wouldn't let them back down. "Beginner's luck," the leader muttered, stepping closer. The bikers were no longer laughing. Tension crackled in the air as they realized Jack wasn't the easy target they'd assumed. But instead of walking away, they doubled down, their frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Jack's quiet confidence was exposing something they couldn't ignore, and it was only a matter of time before things came to a head. The leader stepped forward, his face darkened with a mix of irritation and wounded pride. "All right, let's see how good you really are," he said, his voice lower now, more menacing. He motioned to one of the bikers, who brought out a smaller moving target, a mechanism designed to sway unpredictably in the breeze. The kind of target that even seasoned marksmen struggled with. The gang gathered around, their earlier bravado replaced with a tense silence as they watched Jack. This wasn't just a show anymore. It was a test, one they were sure he would fail. Jack's expression didn't change. He set his rifle down and quietly reached for something in his bag. He lined up his shot, the pistol steady in his hand as the target began to sway erratically. Time seemed to stretch as Jack tracked its movement with a practiced eye. Then, in quick succession, 3 shots cracked through the air. The target stopped moving, swaying slightly as the gang rushed to inspect it. Their faces fell, not 1, but 3 precise hits, clustered tightly at the center. The leader clenched his jaw, trying to mask his disbelief, but it was clear the mood had shifted. This wasn't going the way they'd planned. But as the tension hung in the air, Jack finally spoke. "Shooting isn't about the weapon. It's about focus and control." His calm tone only seemed to irritate them further, but before anyone could respond, a voice from behind interrupted. "Everything all right here?" The bikers turned, startled, as the range officer approached. Jack stayed quiet, his eyes locked on the group. The bikers looked uneasy, caught between their bruised egos and the realization they might be pushing too far. But the moment of hesitation only deepened the question. Would they walk away, or were they about to make their biggest mistake yet? The bikers hesitated as the range officer approached, his sharp eyes moving between them and Jack. "Everything's fine," the leader said quickly, trying to sound casual, though his clenched fists betrayed him. Jack, still calm, simply nodded in agreement. The officer didn't seem convinced. "This isn't the place for games," he said firmly. "If you're here to shoot, follow the rules. Otherwise, leave." His presence diffused some of the tension, but the bikers weren't ready to let it go. The leader shot Jack a glare, his pride still stinging from the veteran's display of skill. "One more round," the leader growled, pulling a coin from his pocket. He held it up and tossed it into the air. "Hit this if you're so good." The coin spun in the sunlight, catching everyone's attention. Jack didn't flinch. In one swift motion, Jack raised his pistol. The sharp crack of the shot echoed, and the coin clinked to the ground, split neatly in half. The biker stared in stunned silence. Jack calmly holstered his weapon, his expression unreadable. Before anyone could react, the range officer picked up the 2 halves of the coin and held them out to the leader. "That's enough," he said firmly. The leader, red-faced and visibly shaken, nodded reluctantly. He motioned for his crew, and one by one, they shuffled away, their earlier bravado replaced with quiet humiliation. As the roar of their bikes faded into the distance, Jack turned back to his station. The officer gave him a small nod of respect before walking away. Jack picked up his gear and prepared to leave, but as he did, he noticed one of the younger bikers lingering near the edge of the range. The young man approached hesitantly, looking down at the ground. "That was incredible," he said, his voice low. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I don't know." Jack studied him for a moment, then gave a faint smile. "Skill isn't about showing off," Jack said. "It's about knowing when not to use it." He handed the young man a piece of the coin before walking away, leaving him with something to think about. The lesson hung in the air, as sharp and clear as the sound of that final shot. As Jack walked back to his truck, the cool breeze carried a sense of calm over the range. The echoes of the bikers' taunts had long faded, replaced by the quiet hum of people returning to their routines. Jack packed his gear with the same precision he brought to his shooting, his movements unhurried. The young biker still stood there, turning the half coin over in his hand, lost in thought. Jack glanced back one last time, nodding subtly before driving off. The boy seemed to straighten as if a weight had been lifted. For Jack, it wasn't about proving himself. He'd done that a lifetime ago. It was about respect, something earned, not taken. The bikers learned that lesson the hard way, and maybe, just maybe, one of them would carry it forward. As the sun dipped lower, the gun range returned to its usual rhythm. But those who witnessed that day wouldn't forget it anytime soon. Jack's quiet strength and unwavering composure left a mark far deeper than any bullet ever could.